Thank you very much. I learned a lot about gonioscopy today myself. It was an excellent presentation and showing all the videos. I'm going to take you a little away from the gonioscopy. I've been asked to present on the risk factors in glaucoma. Of course, it is glaucoma, and we all want to know which patient should be treated when it comes to open-angle glaucoma. As you know that there have been a lot of landmark studies, and one of them, the initial one, and they were all multicentric and funded by the National Eye Institute, most of them. So they had some kind of a message given to you that what happens on a large scale. First one, which was the most important, and we learned a lot, was the ocular hypertension study, which wanted to tell which patient with high pressure will develop glaucoma over a period of 5 years and which will not. And as you know that the one which were treated, the incidence was much less as compared to the one which were not treated. But then you had to figure out which are the ones not treated are likely to develop glaucoma. So this was the first one, and they came out with certain factors. And these factors then in a very nice way were studied by Medeiros in their own labs, which were followed for the period of 86 months. And those factors which were first postulated to be the risk factors in ocular hypertension study were again studied, and then they came out with this, that those 6 factors, which were there part of the OHTS, age being one of the risk factors. Now, to my mind, if you develop glaucoma, it is like cancer. If you develop it at the age of 90, you're lucky instead of getting at the age of 40. But higher the age, more incidence of glaucoma. Intraocular pressure, we always know, is one of the very important risk factors, and they studied average in both eyes over 6 months. Corneal thickness was the most important, which came out of the OATS study, telling that the thin corneas are likely to develop glaucoma because we are falsely recording low pressure in those thin corneas. So in this one, they studied corneal thickness in both eyes done 3 times. Vertical CD ratio, that was averaged in the 2 eyes. Here I just want to tell you, yes, this is true that in glaucoma it is the optic neuropathy, so the optic nerve suffers. But in my mind, the hallmark of glaucoma is asymmetry in the 2 eyes. People can have central deep cups, but symmetrical, and that may not be glaucoma. But that was one of the other risk factors. Pattern standard deviation on the visual fields done in both eyes on the last visual field. That was one of the risk factors. And lastly, the history of diabetes. As you know that in OATS study, people who had diabetes, they found prevented developing glaucoma, and then it was later dropped because it was not found to be an important risk factor. But just to show you how it was done, so a higher age, the points were given. There is a patient, 50-year-old male, non-diabetic, average intraocular pressure of 28, corneal thickness of 520, which is slightly thinner, a CD ratio of 0.5, and pattern standard deviation of 1.25. Now, if I can ask you, if I give you this patient coming to you, how many of you will start treatment on that? I would say a good number of people. Patient who has 28 intraocular pressure with high CD ratio, and if this patient had asymmetry, there will be even more. But anyway, just to look at the example, he gave points, 2 points for this because of 50 year, and as you can see, as the age goes up, the points increase. This is the intraocular pressure. Good importance given to the intraocular pressure of 28, so 5 points given to that. Corneal thickness was given the maximum number. A thin cornea, 520, and gave 21 points. So a thin cornea is a very important risk factor. Vertical CD ratio, 10 with 0.5. Sure, it is a higher than the average. The average is supposed to be 0.3. Then the pattern standard deviation of 1.25 got 2 points, not given too much of importance. And lastly, because the patient was non-diabetic, so it is 0. If it was diabetes, it would have been -9, and we know that. That doesn't make any sense. So if you put it together, the total points, when you counted all that, was 40 points. And then Pfizer came out with these slide rule type devices in which you put down the number of points and find out what is the risk of developing glaucoma. So if you put all that together, 38 to 40, 5-year risk was 16 to 20% of developing glaucoma in this patient. And according to the risk threshold guide patients, which told us that if it is more than 15%, you will treat because there are very good chances of developing glaucoma. Now, the only problem in a litigious society in the United States is, suppose you tell the patient you have glaucoma, patient doesn't take the treatment and goes away. That's not your liability. And if you put a patient, let's say there was somebody who was 12%, and you said, well, you don't have much chance of glaucoma, and that patient develops glaucoma after 5 years, you are liable for that. So you have to be careful when you come out with these absolute numbers, and I only can tell you that I never followed them because you cannot diagnose glaucoma by one visit. That's my hypothesis. Same thing was looked at by the European Early Glaucoma Management, and they also found the same risk factor. Basically, it comes down to is that out of all the risk factors which were studied at the OATS were also seen in Europe, and this is what came out. According to the importance, IOP is given the maximum importance, cup disc ratio is number 2, corneal thickness is number 3, visual fields, to my mind, is a subjective test. It is important, but you cannot always come out with the diagnosis. Race is given an important factor that was not studied in the OATS. To my mind, race is very important, and also the family history of glaucoma. So I give a lot of importance to race. We know that blacks get more glaucoma. Indians might be falling in between. The Japanese get low tension glaucoma. That's important. And a family history of glaucoma, actually there are papers saying that it becomes almost 6 times more chances of developing glaucoma if you have family history. The rest of it, myopia may be important, systemic hypertension, but these are not such important risk factors. There is one more risk factor which has been found to be very important. It is difficult, but it is important that you should be looking for it every time you see a patient suspecting a glaucoma, and also for the progression of the disease, and that is the disc hemorrhage. I don't know how many of you look for it. You do not dilate the patient every time the patient comes for glaucoma examination, and CD ratio will not change every visit if you're seeing the patient twice a year or thrice a year. But one thing you can definitely look at, and if you're conscientiously looking at it and making a note, no disc hemorrhage noted. That's very important. And if you look at the papers which came out again after the OATS study, so many patients were seen for 96 months, and they found the disc hemorrhage was found in 128 eyes, 20% by both taking the photographs of the nerve and looking at it, and 84% by photos only. So it told us that taking photographs of the disc every time you dilate the pupil, you may be able to see a disc hemorrhage which you could not see by examination. But you must understand that hemorrhage comes and disappears in about 2 months, so it is not easy to get it. But if you find a disc hemorrhage, it's a very important risk factor as well as prognostic factor for future development and progression of the disease. From the other normal tension glaucoma studies and early European, again, manifest glaucoma studies, from the normal tension point of view, there are no other separate risk factor, but it was found to be more common in females. Migraine was one of the risk factors, and the disc hemorrhage was much more common in normal tension glaucomas. In the European studies, they found, again, the same thing, older age, elevated intraocular pressure, disc hemorrhage, but pseudoexfoliation. So, like you just saw that, if you suspect pseudoexfoliation, apart from that there is some amount of extra pigment in the angle, you should be looking for open angle glaucoma or the progression, or as well as for the first time appearance of the glaucoma. Then there are many other known risk factors, but they are very difficult to evaluate, like perfusion of the optic nerve. There are a lot of blood flow studies being done, but we don't reach to any conclusions so far. Genetic factors, we know for sure 2 genetic factors very important. One is the myocilin and the optoneurin. Optoneurin is found to be high in cases of low-tension glaucomas. Mechanical factors, which are done by the EDI, doing the enhanced depth imaging by OCT, where you can see the pliability of the lamina tuberosa. And that again goes with the scleral rigidity also. That's why one of the factors in high myopia maybe there is more pliability of the lamina tuberosa. Immunological factors have been introduced. People are thinking of vaccines, but we haven't reached anywhere. Another one has been found, the CSF around the optic nerve, and it is low in primary open-angle glaucomas and no normal tension glaucomas. But how many of you will do these studies? But it is a correlation which has been seen. But my take-home message is that when you're looking for the initial therapy, you can't go by those formulas and by those scales, but the important factors are intraocular pressure, corneal thickness, vertical CD ratio, and the asymmetry, to my mind, is much more important. Family history of glaucoma, I give a lot of importance to that, even for primary open-angle glaucomas. Race is important, and presence of pseudoexfoliation or pigment dispersion. If you see these conditions, even if the pressure is normal, you have to follow those patients very carefully because there is a very likelihood that they can develop glaucoma. In case of progression, when you're looking for the risk factor for progression, you may miss out raised intraocular pressure because compliance is a very important thing, and you will find patients are not compliant, and you may find pressure to be normal at the time of visit, but they are still progressing. And we also don't know how to take pressure for 24 hours. We know that from the studies that pressure goes up at night. So the perfusion pressure may be low in the night, whatever reason, low intraocular pressure, low blood pressure, but high intraocular pressure. Intraocular pressure fluctuations can happen again because the patient is not compliant. And lastly, the most important is disc hemorrhage, which may appear and go, and that may be responsible for the progression of the disease. And other risk factors, when you find everything else comes out to be normal, there is nothing that you can see. And you may see that the systemic blood pressure being low at night, people who have high blood pressure being overtreated, and their blood pressure goes down during sleep, they can have a high risk for progression of the disease. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your attention.